pegs aren't symmetrical.
Good evening.
Good evening.
To start the official proceedings, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Jarrah country, of which the members and elders of the Jarrah community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. Council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. We have all councillors present, so no apologies. Do I have any declarations of interest or conflicts of interest?
Yes, Mayor, I declare a conflict of interest in relation to PEO 03, Community Grants 2018-2019.
And the nature of that conflict?
I have been involved in the development of the Taradale website, and this is an application for further funding.
Thank you. Councillor Goldman?
Yes, I declare one. I am married to the president of the Bolton Tennis Club, who has an application here. Oh, three, yep, same one, sorry.
Same one, okay. Thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation about the minutes of the ordinary meeting. Do I have a resolution?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to approve the minutes as written. The unconfirmed minutes, and the recommendation is
So the recommendation as written?
as written, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire held on 16th of April 2019 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Neiman, thank you. Any objections? Anyone wish to speak? No? Good. Thank you very much, and thanks for managing that meeting. Councillor Corley. So I declare that matter carried. We're about to move into public question time, and to do that I will ask one of the councillors to move a motion.
To suspend standing orders, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Petrusman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Neiman, thank you. In this section, we've got two potential lots of people to come up before us. One is we have some planning applications before us, so I will invite objectors and applicants for those planning applications to stand up and tell us what they want to tell us, and then I will ask the people who want to put a question to us not in relation to the planning applications. When you do present to us, you'll have 3 minutes, and we have standing orders we have local laws that require that we treat each other respectfully, that we don't talk about staff or contractual matters, and I'm sure we'll all get on and listen well. So I'm wondering, do we have anyone when you do stand up, if you could say your name and who you are representing. Now, I can't see everyone behind the stadiums, whatever it is. Lectern, thank you. So if I don't see you, I'll rely on Councillor Petrusman to give me a bit of a heads up around that. So does anyone wish to speak to us about any of the 3 planning applications before us tonight? Please come up. Okay, so if you could let us know who you are and what whether you're an objector or a proponent.
I'm an applicant.
Thank you.
And my name is Mark Blythe, and I'm the applicant for 2 shops, retail premises at Malden. And I'm essentially here to ask for a deferral, if I may. I started some dialogue with our local councillor, and it's probably best that if we do get a deferral, but I've got some reasons for asking for it. and they are, I'll go through the whole thing. Good evening, my name is Mark Blythe. I'm requesting a deferral of our planning application at the request of Stephen Gardner to the June council meeting for the following reasons. We only ever had one meeting with Tim Blackie, who left the Shire at a formative stage of our application. Lisa Merkenstein, the Heritage Officer, sat in on that meeting. Due to the sudden nature of Tim's departure, this application passed through various hands, and while I am sure all care was taken to make sure our voice was going to be heard, circumstances and our inexperience with the process meant that it never happened. We always assumed that there would be at least one meeting with the consultant who took over from Tim, Warwick Fisher, and as a result we never formally requested one. Later requests with the planning department were declined. We believed, in experience once again, that the Heritage Advisor's report was to be the introduction to any dialogue regarding our application, not the end of it. While the mould and design guideline should provide the foundation of any discussion or considerations of what is ultimately to be built in Maldon, there should, and in the past has been, some degree of latitude on what will and will not be considered. In conclusion, we firmly believe that any issues with our application can be resolved by the next council meeting, and a deferral is the solution that best serves all parties.
Thank you very much, and thanks for stating that very clearly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there another hand up on a planning issue? If it's on the same matter, is there any other question on the same matter? Any other? No? Okay. While you're standing, thank you.
Hi, my name's John Blight, and this is in relation to PA 130/2018, an application for removal of vegetation and the construction of a dwelling at 146 Collies Road. I emailed all of the councillors yesterday with a letter stating my case and all the technical jargon. The purpose of me standing here and talking in front of you is just to, I guess, plead my personal reasons for the application and why I believe council should give me a favourable outcome with allowing it to proceed. I was raised in Castlemaine as a young man, and I've recently relocated back to Castlemaine after being away for 10 years, creating a what would you call a career in events and whatnot. I've got 2 young children and a wife that I've relocated back to town. The property in question is owned by my mother and has been in our family for 35 years. Currently, if without the favourable outcome with this planning application, we fear that the property is rendered worthless and useless. That's proven to the point where we've had it valued at $117,000, but the council have valued it at $205,000. We do not intend on any major development, and I've had discussions with Dave over the phone previously when I thought I was going to be in a different council meeting. Unfortunately, I did experience some issues, as per the previous gentleman, with Tim Blackie and Warwick Fisher also. Relevant, I don't want to bang on about that. My wife and I have moved back here in December with the forethought that we will purchase this property from my mother, and we will be the sole owners and occupiers of that land. We have no intention of overdevelopment, and we have a future plan of a second residential purpose residence at the rear of the property, hopefully in 15 to 20 years' time. I have a love for this town. Obviously, I've moved back here after being away for 10 years, and I've kept close connections to this town. And I'm pretty sure that Councillor Petrusna could vouch for my history in this town and some of the things that I've done, from blue light discos to state festival volunteering and whatnot. We've brought a business into town. We're about to start a second business in the town. We've already employed 1 employee through my wife's business, and we have every intention of staying. However, if we don't get a favourable outcome, unfortunately, we won't be able to stay because the plan is up in smoke. So just pretty much wanted to put a personal front to my application and give you all an understanding of why we've come back here and what our intentions are doing. I believe you've all got all the reasons and the clauses under the sun in my letter to give it a tick of approval, but I just want to give you an understanding of personal front from myself and my family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this issue, on this planning application? Do you have a question?
I do have a question. Mayor. I've just caught something which I'm unsure. Is the applicant talking about 2 dwellings or just the one? Is it was something about over here?
No, just the one. We've actually made an application for one, but in being truthful, I do intend on building a second, hopefully in 15 to 20 years' time when my kids move out.
Separately.
Not a problem for us at the moment. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Maybe on council then, I don't think I will be. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on a planning issue?
Yeah, but it's from last week, so maybe he should go. I mean, last month. Yeah.
Thank you. And when you talk to us, could you please not discuss particular staff? Happy to hear of any problems, but not in relation to naming staff. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, my name's John Baldock. I live at 25 Dr. Vargas Lane. I'm here to object or to support my objection to the proposed planning permit for to build a dwelling on number 10 Eagles Lane, Dr. Vargas Lane, sorry, and also to support the council's report, which recommends the rejection of that planning permit. I'm here, I'm quite willing to answer any questions or anything like that. You would have a copy of my objection, no doubt, and but if you wanted to ask any questions, I'm quite willing to answer them.
Thank you very much. Not getting any indication of questions. Was there somebody else who wished to speak on this? Righto, thank you.
Hi, Adam Rutina. I'm at 8 Dr. Vargas Lane. Just simply, I'd like to endorse the officer's report as well. Very well written document. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well under your 3 minutes. Thanks. And you also wish to speak, yeah? This is also about a planning issue?
Same planning issue.
Same, thank you.
Thank you. I'm here actually to speak in support of the development application for the reason that I'm actually the vendor selling the block and I have information that will input into the decision.
And I'm sorry, can you say what your name is?
My name is Slade Beard, sorry, and
Thank you
I'm the
very
owner
much.
of a company called EcoThought who actually owns that block of land. So we bought that land to actually test ideas around development of technology for farming. Over the last 5-year period, we've expended in excess of $50,000 on that block of land to try and come up with an economic use of it. We have completely failed and have made significant cash losses in that process. Some of the reasons are, firstly, the block's in a high frost zone, results in significant losses in any attempts to produce food on the block. That's all supported in a letter that was provided to council by the McLeans family who know the area pretty well and actually have a house directly opposite the block. Soil is highly acidic, requiring significant inputs to achieve productivity. Consistent rainfalls failures have necessitated the use of irrigation inputs to maintain basic crop growth. Block has a 5 megalitre application on it, of which 4 is only provided because we transferred it from one of our other properties. Stocking rates have not been able to be increased above 6 rand. Total production from the block in 5 years is 15 round bales of hay and the production of 6 rams. The block's surrounded on 2 sides by road frontages and each end by 2,000 square metre blocks. One of those blocks has been one of the objectors to the application. The other landholder has supported the application. With respect to the point that the proposal would result in fragmentation of agricultural land, the fragmentation took place when the subdivision was declared in the early 1900s. With respect to catchment management, there's a short dry gully in the centre of the property which is 80 metres long and drains out to flat pastures on opposite sides of the road. It's unclear how any development on the block would impact waterways or water quality. The breakup from the neighbouring property in 2012-2013, which was supported by council, resulted in the breaking of this 8 acre block from the home of one of the objectors, thus resulting in 2 separate titles in effect. One of the submissions was the development would inhibit the rights of existing farming operations. There are no farming operations bordering onto the block. This approval is the subject of, with the exception of another non-economic cattle, low stock count grazing operation. The lot's located in an area of moderate agricultural quality as identified in clause 2106. Soil testing undertaken by us as part of our operations block showed consistent soil acidities in the mid to high 5 range. Soil fertility can only be maintained through the application of high levels of input. Yes, the block is subject to an irrigation licence. However, there's only a 1 megalitre licence that was originally supplied with the block. The nearest source of any spray that would actually impact the block from intensive horticultural operations is an area 740 metres to the southeast of the proposal. And I further note that the application is 1.8 kilometres from the edge of the Harcourt village. Therefore, it's reasonable to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did we have another person who wished to speak on this?
Yes, we do. Hi guys, my name is Virginia McFarlane. I'm the person that's actually put in the application for King Dr. Barker's Lane. Innocently I come across and found this lovely block that I thought that I would be able to build a house on. And got caught up with certain people objecting about the block. One particular person, I found out that it had already put a planning permit in 5 years ago, and I don't know what the problem was, whether they got rejected or they didn't actually put the planning permit didn't go through. But that was one of the objectors that initially put a planning permit in 5 years ago. The other people that
No, you need to talk to us.
the other people that have objected are living on half acre. They're living in the middle of a farming zone, but they're not farming. So I just sort of think, well, I don't understand it, to be quite honest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak on this planning issue? So no other planning issue.
The lady from last.
There's one from last month, yeah.
It's not on the agenda, Mayor, but it's the lady wishes to speak to council in relation to a matter.
Okay, so I'm going to regard this not as a question on a planning issue, but as a question.
Okay.
So if you would like to speak, and then we'll open it up to other people who wish to ask questions.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Viola Monsell, and I would have been here last month if I'd known anything about the application that came before you last month. I know you weren't here because I watched the video. Unfortunately I don't have the number, but I think it's in my phone, which I can't have on, but I think it's readily ascertainable. It's about the best petrol station convenience store. So the first thing is to put a comment or express concern into the record that people that live in my street, which is Greenhill Avenue, could have a decision made that might potentially involve their street without knowing anything about it. I understand that,
Could you just hold for half a moment, please?
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Since I live on Britain Street, I was just checking whether I had a conflict of interest, but since there's no decision, it's okay. We can continue to hear, and I don't have to leave.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll try to be really fast. So basically, the application went through without most of us knowing anything about it, and the reason that we would have an interest is because there's a no right-hand turn condition from Vic Roads on the permit, and that leaves people the options of either doing a UE from the left, doing a UE from the right, or rerouting themselves around that whole area. Green Hill Avenue, Britain, I think, Vincent, and then coming out and turning left off Railway. So first of all, I wanted to express concern that a decision could be made without us who are potentially affected even knowing anything about it. Secondly, I understand from talking to Vic Roads, because after we did find out about it, we were in a position to make inquiries, and I understand from Vic Roads that the condition of a no right-hand turn is actually being reassessed at the request of council. So I was wondering if I could find out anything a little bit more about that, and if there's any chance at all that the issuing of this permit could be delayed until this is being properly sorted. And then last of all, I'm just thinking if there's going to be a big pile of money thrown at rerouting traffic, is that going to be taken from the developer? And that's the end of me, but there is someone else who would like to speak on the same matter.
I'm wondering if we could get a response, perhaps Mr. Yusupovich, and that might then help direct the next person.
So in terms of the first part of the question, whether we could delay issuing the permit, we can't. Council made a decision last month, and there has been a notice of decision to grant a permit issued, and that was issued pretty much straight after the last council meeting. But what that means is that objectives have 28 days to appeal that particular decision with VCAT, and as of today I understand an appeal has been lodged, but I have no further details to that. So the permit won't be issued until VCAT considers the matter, and then VCAT ultimately decides whether they'll issue or refuse the permit.
So I'm aware of that. Actually, that's how it came to the attention of people that did live in the street that this thing had happened by that objector. We don't have standing because we didn't object. Yeah, so that's part of the question, but the other part is like, how does this even come up without us on Green Hill and Vincent and all that being notified that there's a planning application before the council that might involve traffic being rerouted via our street? Surely we should have had an opportunity of being here last month, and then we would be objectors and we would have standing. And secondly, are you as a council currently reassessing that? I understand from Vic Roads that you have requested them to reassess their position on the right-hand turn, and if yes, is the developer going to pay for that, or is the public first going to pay?
So at the moment, what we've asked Vic Roads, I've basically advised Vic Roads there's been significant concern about that condition of a no right turn, and they've said they're happy to have a review that and have a look at that. If they were to try and insist on a new condition, that might be problematic, given that they've already given us a condition that was included in the notice of decision.
Yeah.
But they might mount that argument also at VCAT that perhaps that needs to be amended. And if there's any change, it would usually be on the developer to pay for that.
Oh, good.
Like a right turn slip lane or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the proposal, it's not necessarily something that council or Vic Roads would pay for.
So thank you. Your time is up. Who else wished to speak on that issue?
She doesn't think she can add to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Sanders?
Joyce Sanders, shopkeeper. In recent weeks, I've noticed that my retail neighbours are parking their cars out front in Barker Street, and they usually start doing this when we no longer have a parking inspector. So I would like to ask tonight, if we do indeed have one, the adjacent shopkeepers are always quick to notice no one getting parking tickets any longer. After 15 years of watching shopkeepers do this, I've given up on explaining to them that their personal income as well as the economy of Castlemaine depends on customers being able to park. So in any particular day, of the 10 parking spots in my block of Barker Street, up to 7 of them can be taken by the shopkeepers themselves. The parking study survey a few years ago identified that no need to build more parking areas existed in Castlemaine if the Shire was willing to police the existing parking. But if council is not willing to regulate this parking, and if council is not willing to hire a parking officer whose job is exclusively parking enforcement, is it fair to ask now for council to purchase land to extend parking areas in Castlemaine? I would have thought that council would see the logic in the cheaper option of patrolling existing parking, but in all the years since the parking survey, I've never found that to be the case. I would have thought that council would easily accept that a viable business sector relies on regulated customer parking, that the best gift that the council could give to business communities would be regulated parking, but it's never been the case that that was understood. Over the years, there have been gaps in parking officer employment. There have been long periods where officers were sent out exclusively to police animals on farm roads. And in the rare period where a parking officer has been engaged, they never seem to be out before 10 or 11 a.m. and never after 3 or 4. So retailers religiously go and fetch their cars at 3 o'clock to park them out front so they can make a fast getaway at closing time. So for a shop like mine, I can lose 4 hours of customers a day, even when a parking officer is employed for the middle hours. Can you see how much that hurts in loss of income? Can you not see that the viability of the business sector could be in danger from council's inaction? May I please ask in advance that the issue be a priority for next year's budget? And could I also ask that the parking officer's job not be linked with that of ranger? The reason being that the duties of ranger will only grow as council grows.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, would you like to respond to that, Mr. Yusupovich?
I'll try.
Thank you.
At the moment, we do have local laws officers whose responsibility is to monitor car parking as well as rangers. The point you made about them having those two functions is absolutely correct. I will take the issue on notice in terms of not inspecting during the week, because my understanding is that they do, but I will take that on notice and find out what our schedule is. In terms of additional resources, we've recently advertised for a casual local laws officer, so we'll have some presence on weekends as well, so we can monitor parking issues. We can also monitor, there's been some concerns raised about people parking illegally at markets and the like, and dogs at markets and the like, so we have advertised for a casual local laws officer to cover weekend duties, and I'm hoping to have that position finalised within the next month or so.
Thank you. I must say I get quite a few complaints from people who've got a parking fine. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, please stand up. And if you go more than 3 minutes, I'll have to stop you so we can extend the time for questioning.
I'll keep it brief. My name's Lance McDonald. I'm just representing local farmers. We all have kangaroo permits because we have big problems with kangaroos now. I can go into it if you wish me to, but the main crux of it is we have permits and the roos just have to be left or chucked down a hole. However, other councils allow them to be sent to the abattoirs at Seymour. and it's up to the council, not the DNRE, to make that decision. I've rang them. So in the end, no more kangaroos will be shot. You just get issued a tag, and if you have a permit for 30 kangaroos, you get 30 tags. And the best part about it is you get someone who's, I can get a kid who's a really good shot, professional at it. And whereas I'm a farmer, I work all day, I'm not into after dark, I get in, have a shower, have dinner, and then I've got to go out again. It's a chore to me that has to be done. But I think it would be a way of making use of them, and no more kangaroos would be culled, even though the permit to go to Seymour would be allowed.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I think Councillor Henderson has a question.
Sorry, what happens to these kangaroos? I didn't quite hear you.
In the permits, you get quotes of how many kangaroos you can kill, but you're not allowed to use them for financial gain or anything like that. Really, they've got to be left where they're shot. There is ways around it, but it's a nuisance just leaving rotting carcasses for foxes to eat and whatever. This way, use would be made of them.
By taking them.
There's an abattoir. Seymour.
Seymour abattoir.
Yeah. But of course, it's a fair way away, and to make it worthwhile, you've got to get someone who's willing to do it, and they've got to get 20 or 30 to make it worth it, the run over there. But there's plenty, we've all got permits, there's plenty of kangaroo permits around. But it's really up to the council, not up to the DNRE. And the other thing, I think it cuts out in September, so it can't be sort of stalled to the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting, and then the whole thing will run out.
Councillor Gardner?
I was going to say Phil. Lucky
Mr.
Phil.
Yusovic.
Because as councillors we have raised, so I'm hoping you have done some investigation. Okay, good.
Thank you.
So my understanding, based on the investigation, it's not a council permit process or whatever that decides who can and can't participate in this program. It's been run by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. And as has been suggested, the idea is that the kangaroos end up at an abattoir for pet food purposes. The state government is undertaking a trial at the moment, which they've extended, I think, from June till September, an extra 3 months. It's looking like they're going to have a permanent program in place, but they're working out how to control numbers so we don't go too far or don't go far enough, all that kind of stuff. We have requested through our regional DELP people that Mount Alexander be included in that trial, and I haven't had a response yet. And I made that request about 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I haven't had a response yet on that. But it's not up to us to determine who can and can't participate in that pet food trial.
Yeah.
But we are advocating for it, and we're trying to get
For
involved.
Mount Alexander to participate in it.
Yeah, for our shire and farmers within our shire.
Great city of Bendigo.
Yeah, there's a number of councils that are participating in the trial, and the state government have given me indications that they want to change the makeup of that trial till September. But then after September, they'll be looking at how the program will roll out wider. What we've asked for is A, can we participate in the trial till September, because we've got farmers who have a need, and B, certainly want to be considered once the program becomes more permanent.
It may have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it was only 2 weeks ago that I asked, and I don't think they had an application from Mount Alexander at that time, because he said, go to the council meeting and get back to me on how you get on.
Well, they've certainly got a request from me to their people in their office in Bendigo, but the advice I've been given is that they're not going to extend the trial beyond the current participants. But we are trying to get that anyway. So they're saying whoever's in, and I don't remember the numbers, but whoever's currently in that trial, that's it, till September. After September, then they still haven't told us or advised us how the program's going to roll out more long term. But it won't be limited to just to the trial participants. I'm pretty confident it'll be extended beyond that, but who, I don't know. But we've already put our hand up to say we want to be in it.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wish to speak? That's great, because we've run out of time. So do I have a motion, councillors?
Motion to resume standing orders.
Second. Councillor Gardner, Councillor Petrusma, Councillor Gardner. Thank you very much. We now go on to the business of council. And just in case this is your first time, we have no objection to anyone wandering out quietly at any time they wish. So we have no petitions and joint letters tabled here, though we do have a response to a couple, and we have no committee reports. We have assemblies of councillors on page 8 and a recommendation. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lesser?
Yes, I move the council notes the records of the assemblies of councillors as required under the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cordy. Thank you. Any objections, amendments? No? Anyone wish to speak to this? No? In which case I declare the motion carried. Thank you. And thank you for all the hard work you did. So we're now moving to page 14 of the agenda papers and looking at the Community Grants 2018-2019 recommendation for funding. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor Mason. The recommendation is that Council approves the awarding of community grants as detailed in the confidential attachment PEO 03B Community Grants Program 2018-19 Summary of Recommendations, excluding consideration of CG 18/19058 and CG 18/19062, and in addition approve those applications which were scored at 13 out of 20 or greater. So I've added an extra part to that recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a seconder? No, you can't second, sorry. Councillor Neiman, you're seconding this motion? Thank you. Is there anyone who objects to this motion?
Yes, ma'am.
So Councillor Petrusma and Councillor Lesser, you're objecting to this. So we now go into a debate, and as usual, I'd ask the mover to start the discussion, the debate.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge the work from the community members and also council staff have in terms of putting together the community grants program and also the recommendation. My reason for excluding two items is that two of our councillors have got conflicts in relation to those two items, and that just for the audience that might explain that. But I think the community grants are a fantastic way for council to engage with the community, and we've seen some very successful projects, and I commend the recommendation to all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Neiman, do you wish to respond at this stage? No, thank you. So,
No, we can say it.
again, just checking on procedures, my apologies. The two objectors, Councillor Petrusma.
Yes, I can object to the motion as it's been put. There's no objection to separating out the two separate items because they're the subjects of the conflict and will be dealt with separately, individually. But the issue for me is our officers have given us a recommendation to approve all those as a scoring system for these community grants. And whilst I agree with Councillor Cordy that it's a wonderful process for people to obtain money for community projects, there is a scoring system in place. It's been in place for some time, and they have to get to a particular score to be considered for the grant. And the motion is asking us to actually allow further grants that don't meet that score, in fact meet the lower score, so haven't met the standard normally required of council. And the number of those grants, just give me 2 seconds. I think it's 7 extra grants, which would also, as well as not meeting the normal standard that we request, we're actually asking in this application to lower the standard, which I disagree with. But it also puts us $6,000 over budget. We've got an allocated budget for these grants, and if we approve this, it actually puts us over budget, and I don't believe that's responsible spending. The recommended motion is slightly under budget, but there's no way to split these other than some sort of system, so I'd speak against the motion. I believe it's unfair to those that put in better applications, that people with less applications can always apply again and with more information later, but I believe they should be rejected.
Can I just have a point of clarification on what you said, Councillor Petrusa? My reading of the report is that the officers wouldn't support anything under a score of 10, but they haven't said that 13 are not supportable. It's just a line drawn around the budget. So I'd like to get clarification from Ms. Knight, just to make sure that we are arguing the right thing at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor Machin, that's correct. So within the paper on page 17, it notes that the score out of 20 that's been recommended for inclusion for the community grants now is 14 out of 20. However, anything that scores 10 out of 20 or lower will not be considered. So 13 out of 20, in theory, would still be an acceptable score.
Do you wish to come back to your argument, or...?
I'll just clarify my argument.
Thank you.
In that the officer's recommendation of what we approved tonight is 14 and above, even though in some instances we could approve anything above 10. But approving everything above 10 would put us miles over budget. And that's why the score was set at to only fund the higher levels, which are 14 and above, which keeps us within budget. And dropping that to any extent, even if it's only the one score, puts us over budget, and I don't believe we should be putting ourselves over budget.
Thank you. Who would like to speak in favour of the motion? Councillor Henderson?
I'm allowed to speak, presumably, even though I can't say it. So I would respect what my fellow Councillor Petrusa says about, the officers have done the work, and we should stick with their recommendation and watch out for don't go over budget. I think last year we went under budget. We did not give out over $14,000 worth of money that was allocated towards community projects. And I was pretty disappointed with that, because that goes out little bits at a time. Maximum is $3,000. It's not a lot of money these days for a community project. It's a lot of money in my pocket or your pocket, I hope, but it's certainly not a lot of money if someone's trying to do a substantial project for the community, and notwithstanding the cooking fit in the back row there. And so I felt that it was unfortunate that we weren't able to actually allocate that $14,000. Then this year we're actually going to keep back almost $13,500 because it just meets that cut-off line of 14 out of 20. I would strongly advocate, like my fellow councillor, Councillor Cordy, that we go over by less than half that amount, i.e. just a bit under 6,500, and fund the next tier down. The next tier down, 13 out of 20. I'm not advocating we put everyone in that got 10 or more out of 20. I'm just saying, let's do the right thing by the community. I spend all the money we've allocated in our budget to community projects at no more than $3,000 a time, and okay, let's go over by 2 grants. Let's just spill over by 2 more grants this time. Maybe next time we'll be back to underspending, but this time I think we should do the right thing by the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Lesser, do you wish to speak against?
I do, Mayor Machin. I think this is a mess now that I've even looked at even further. I am going to agree with my fellow councillor, Councillor Petrusma, and I think that there's two things to this motion. One is whether the value of the community grants. I think that's a separate issue to whether we're going over budget or those that are below the line. And it is fine to say on page 17 that we recommend this, that and that, but if you go back to page 16, and it's saying there, of the 52 applications assessed, the total request was whatever it is, 776,000. Of those 52 applications, 28 are recommended for funding, totaling a recommended allocation of $100,000. And if you look at the back page of the summary, it's the same thing. It's talking about the number of applications, number of...
Just be careful, remembering that's a confidential document.
Okay.
Thank you. So just be careful about what you're reading out.
Well, I'm just saying it's the same bit in there about what was funded. So therefore, I believe that there are two separate issues here, and I think they need to be clarified out. One is the value of the community grants, and the other one is the overspend of the budget, and to go against the recommendations and all the work that the council officers have put in. Plus the fact is, we've already looked at this at a previous time, and this should have been brought up at a previous briefing when we looked at the various funding and the documents, and why is it coming now? And I think that we had that time. Yes, well, it could be a bit, yes, it may be a public debate. But again, we're going now against the officer's recommendation. So what's the message that we're now giving?
Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Councillor Gardner.
No, let Nemo go.
Nemo, do you, Councillor Neiman, do you wish to speak?
Nemo will do fine. Sorry.
Following Councillor Henderson is always a bit of a trap as far as the words go, because you've used all the good ones. There are 7 items that have got a 13 score. Surely we can differentiate and do a second run on a score on those 7 and pick out 2. Because or pick out 2 or 3. I firmly believe that in all grant circumstances, at the end of the day, you should end up with done as much as you could and have $1 in the bank.
Can I have a point of order there? I'm not sure whether you're speaking for or against the motion.
I'm speaking for the motion. Good time for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak?
Yeah. I actually want to first start, before I say anything, I have received lots of positive feedback about the grants this year, which has been really good, particularly splitting it and the partnership grants. I think that's an awesome thing. Look, these are small grants. They do mean a lot to these organisations. If it was up to me, I'd probably advocate and fight down to 10, but I know there's a snowflake's chance of hell of that happening. The up to 13 people meet the criteria and they meet it well. So there was an arbitrary line drawn and said, this is budget, we'll stick to it. Councillor Henderson had, as I said last time, we're underspent, and it was brought forward. I would like to see we fully spend it. Now $6,000, yeah, people might say it is a lot of money. I don't know, maybe if we get really desperate, we'll stop biscuits for a couple of weeks or something, I'm not sure, whatever. But I do believe we can find in the budget, and we're coming up to the end of the financial year, and it's generally unlikely that we fully commit anything, so I don't think 6,000 is going to cause a great deal, but will be greatly welcomed by these small groups. So I would support Councillor Cordy's change.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Cordy, do you wish to respond? Have the right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just pick up on one aspect in terms of the scoring of the grants. The allocation of the few extra dollars to the grants that score 13 and above doesn't detract at all from, or take away anything from the grants that scored higher. All it means is that more community groups and more people trying to run events in our community will be supported. So I commend the motion to my fellow councillors, and I'd like to see it supported. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Cordy's motion, please raise your hand. Those against? The motion is carried.
Division, thanks, Mayor.
Could I please have a division? All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillors Henderson, Cordy, Machin, Gardner and Neiman. Those against? Councillors Lesser and Petrusma. Thank you. We now have to do two sort of procedural motions. So, Councillor Gardner, could you leave the room?
I'd love to.
Oh, hang on a sec. I've just been told we need to have a motion before you can leave. Sorry about that. Okay, so could I please have a motion in regards to, which one is it? 19058.
I'm happy to put the motion forward, information in relation to that one.
And the motion is?
The council approves the awarding of the community grant at CG 18, is it 19062?
No, 58.
Sorry, 19058, as detailed in the confidential attachment PO 03B, Community Grants Program 2018-19.
Thank you. Seconder for that. Councillor Lesser, thank you. Councillor Gardner is leaving because this is the one that has a conflict, an indirect conflict of interest. Thank you, councillors. Is there any objection to that motion? Anyone wish to speak to it?
I think we should speak at length. Councillor Gardner's actually got out of the room. Basically, it's just another good one, from Malden Tennis Club to do some very practical works on their tennis facility, community club. Good on them.
Thank you. There being no, yes.
I'll just note that this particular matter was a highly scored application.
Yes,
It's okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else wish to speak? There being no debate, I declare that motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Yusupovich. Thank you.
I heard that.
You're not here. Could I please have a motion in regards to the other one?
I'll put the, basically it was a similar motion that council approves the awarding of community grant CG 1819062 as detailed in the confidential attachment PO 03B, Community Grants Program 2018-2019.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lesser, thank you. I think you're declaring your conflict of interest in this one.
My hand firmly over my ears there.
Thank you. I think my office is unlocked. Okay. Is there any objection to this motion? Anyone wish to speak to it? I therefore declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Taylor. We're now moving to PO 04, the Annual Plan 2018-19 Quarter 3 Progress Report. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do I have a motion? I would really like a motion on this one. Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
As printed, Mayor.
As printed. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Petrusma, a seconder. Any objections? No. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak to this?
No, simply to say that we're always grateful to get these quarterly updates on the progress of our annual plan, which details not everything that we're doing, but significant items that are in the plan. And I do note that in the matter of the Offley Dog Park, the site option assessment is currently underway. How nice. I'm looking forward very much to hearing the outcome of that site assessment. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Petruesma?
No, but I support what Councillor Henderson says. I'm very happy to see that there's a dog park, hopefully, some good news soon.
Councillor Corder.
Just for the dog lovers in the community, there's a very nice dog park at Kangaroo Flat. And Barrier.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this? Okay, that being the case, I declare the motion carried. And I actually would like to reflect this quarterly progress report. We're 3/4 of the way through our annual plan. Things are going really well. We continue to deliver our 100 services according to the more than 100 acts that we have to abide by. We're continuing to stay within budget, and we're continuing to be more efficient and more innovative. I think the staff have done a great job, and I think we as councillors did a really good job in getting this budget and annual plan underway. So thank you very much. Moving on to the response to a petition, page 26, a request to phase out glyphosate and other chemical herbicides in parks, childcare centres, schools, playgrounds in the Mount Alexander Shire Council area.
Happy to move as per the recommendation, Mayor.
So, thank you. We have a motion that has now been seconded by, is that right, Councillor Nina? So we now have a motion. Do we have any objections to this motion?
I'd like to object to this motion.
Thank you. Any other objectors? No? Okay. Councillor Petruesma, would you like to speak to this, please?
Indeed, I will. We've had quite a few people come and speak to council about the use of glyphosate, herbicide. There's been a number of recent cases in the USA and considerable, concern in the community about its use. Our staff have looked into the use at this stage and in fact are continuing to monitor and continuing to trial alternative herbicides and physical methods to minimise use of glyphosate, or hopefully at some stage cut it out completely, but we're not in a position at this stage to do that. The recommendation to continue to use it as part of council's weed control at this stage is still necessary. Note in the report that the use is quite minimal and it's actually already not used in, just trying to find the exact details in the report, just bear with me. So page
after the dot points on page 28.
Okay.
Sorry, the upper dot points.
So top of dot points. It's not presently, what's no longer used by council in playgrounds. As a precautionary measure, or weed control in playgrounds is all done by non-herbicide methods. And council does not maintain any childcare centre or school garden, so that part of the has all been taken care of, which was, I think, the main concern in the application. Certainly, I'd just like to indicate the council is certainly looking at hopefully eventually phasing out the use, but at this stage, until the trials continue to find a suitable alternative, that use will continue, but albeit in a sparing nature.
Thank you, Councillor Petruesma. Councillor Neiman, do you wish to speak as well?
Just briefly, I'm most pleased to see that we have a glyphosate review team, which is looking at various alternatives. We are proactive in this. We have met much of the petition's problems around schoolyards. That's why I support it.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak in favour of your objection?
Okay, so to be clear with my objection, the reason why I'm objecting is I would actually like to see council stop completely using glyphosate. So that's why I'm objecting. And I'm not sure if we get to debate that or not, but we'll see how this motion goes up. Roundup's been hailed as a miracle weed killer. And as indicated, there has been a number of court cases, and it is linked to cancer. Other countries have currently banned it, France and Vietnam. It reminds me of the cigarette companies. They kept telling you it was safe. It took decades and court cases for the manufacturers to admit the product caused cancer. I think Roundup is the same. I don't categorise myself as some hippie tinfoil hat wearer, and I have used Roundup directly into cactuses. It is effective, but it is horrible. It is just loop. Even if you wear protective clothing, it goes everywhere. I've used it to control weeds. It does a great job, and it absolutely kills everything. We've just experienced a very severe drought. When the storm arrived, one of them, it brought in the topsoils from the Mallee. Because Roundup sloshed everywhere, there is nothing holding that soil together. We need to adapt to changing conditions. I think council should display leadership in this area and just cease using it. There are many more ways to control weeds, and yes, it might be more time consuming, possibly more expensive, but we should do it. I think we need to be cautious in using the substance that is currently losing billions in lawsuits overseas, just like the cigarette companies, and it will eventually come here. And I think we also need to be mindful of the health effects it possibly could have. And I'd like to see it banned.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Petrusma, would you like your right of reply?
Yeah, just briefly. I take on board what Councillor Gardner says, and I share some concerns, but the science at this stage is that if used correctly, which is always a big ask, I guess, but I'm sure our council staff do in fact use it exactly as it's recommended. If used correctly and as per the recommendations, it's safe. It's still an approved herbicide by our federal government. It's approved for use in Australia. Obviously, if that changed, I would have a very, very different view. But presently, it is an approved herbicide for use. The science at this stage is that it is safe to use if used correctly. And like any substance, it can be dangerous if used incorrectly. And I don't think we should ban something on the basis that some people may use it incorrectly. So I continue to support the recommendation, but I do take on board the concerns and the nature of the US court cases may at some stage go somewhere else, but it's been constantly reviewed. So.
Thank you. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Those again? Thank you. So I declare the motion carried.
Better call for a division then.
I'd like to call for a division. All those in favour? Councillor Lesser, Cordy, Machin, Neiman and Petrusma. Those against? Councillors Gardner and Henderson. Thank you. I declare, as you know, the motion is carried. And my own feeling on this, I voted for it, and I'm really glad we are looking for ways to minimise and minimise and minimise. It's not an easy thing to vote for, but it's also, I don't know how we manage weeded areas without. Thank you. So we're now moving to the second of our petitions. Sorry, Councillor Henderson? No? Thank you. Now moving to the second of our petitions, and we have a motion. We have a recommendation, do I have a motion?
Move it as printed.
Thank you, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Any objections? Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Gardner?
Briefly, I think I spoke the last meeting. Yes, I support the petitioners. Lowther Street was or still is, I suppose, the truck route around Malton. Traditionally, I suppose it was just a bunch of paddocks. It's now becoming quite a residential built-up area. People walking, there's no footpaths on the street, so I would really be interested to see what the outcome from Big Roads is, and would hopefully they would lower it to 60.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this?
To support the motion.
Thank you. All those in favour of the motion? Thank you. I declare the motion carried. We're now moving to page 32, looking at Eco 13 planning permit application 353 of 2018 for the use and development of a dwelling at 10 Dr. Barker's Lane, Harcourt North. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Councillor Cordy, do you have a motion?
Thanks, Mayor Motion. I have an alternate motion. I have a motion that Council, just in summary, that Council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the use and development of a dwelling and shed at 10 Dr. Barker's Lane, Harcourt North, subject to the following conditions. And I'd ask Mr. Taylor to distribute copies of that. But also, my motion is that, as per the content of that document, that strike out section 7, which is for a 173 agreement. So, yeah, that is the motion. Happy to read it if you like. I think if everyone has a copy of it, that should be sufficient. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Neiman, put his hand up first. Were you going to second it, or Yep, that's okay. I was just wondering if you wanted clarification. Okay, so we have a seconder. Do we have any objections? So we have.
I'd like to hear the debate for this before I decide.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Cordy, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Mayor Motion. Look, we get a few of these from time to time, and I would just make a couple of points. In terms of agricultural pursuits on these small blocks, they're not mutually exclusive with having a dwelling. Typically with a property of this size, the area of a dwelling is usually less than 1% of the property area, so you can argue that having a dwelling doesn't have a great impact on the agricultural capacity of the property. The other aspect of that is, I would argue that having a dwelling there so people can live and work on the property, what it results in is an increased level of activity and input, and it can certainly be more productive if people have access to the land to work it. As a farmer myself, I know that the property where I reside is much more intensively farmed than other properties that I farm where I have to travel to those properties. So my argument is that having a dwelling there actually doesn't work against the pursuit of agriculture at all. The other point I would note is that many adjacent properties, if you have a look on Google Maps, which is something that I did in relation to this application, and there's a lot of lifestyle size properties in the area, and some of them are carrying on agricultural pursuits, some are not, but you know, our planning scheme that has these sort of properties picked up in in a farming overlay, I think we recognise as a council that our planning scheme needs some work in this area. But in summary, I think having the dwelling there will only assist the agricultural potential of this property. I know property operators that have successfully operated on smaller properties and made good livings. So I actually take issue with the fact that you can't farm successfully on these small properties, but I would also say that having the dwelling there actually adds to the value and the level of agricultural production on the property. Thank you, Mayor Mason.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Neiman, do you wish to speak as a seconder now or later?
Later.
Later. Thank you. Objectors to the motion, who wishes to speak? Councillor Lesser.
Thank you, Mayor Machin. I did look into this, and I have prepared a small report from my digging into it. Now, I'm concerned that this application does not achieve the outcomes and the objectives of the farming zone and the provisions of the planning scheme, seeking the protection of agricultural land from non-agricultural uses. Now, furthermore, there is a clear direction throughout state and local planning policies to focus rural living into areas zoned for that purpose and to discourage development of small lots throughout the Shire, and furthermore to discourage the use of existing Old Crown allotments in the farming zone for rural living purposes. Now, in our own Shire, there have been 2 VCAT decisions upholding the principles of the stated aims of the planning scheme, and you'll see it on page 37 and 38 of our documents or our agenda. Now, the general consensus of these decisions is that dwellings on small lots in the farming zone are not an acceptable planning outcome under the provisions of the planning scheme. Now, I've got a number of further concerns, and these are my own personal opinions, and I just want to enumerate those. Now, if this application was approved, and I stress this is my own thoughts, the possible intervention by the planning minister, because going against the planning scheme, and the possible rezoning of large tracts of land into rural living zones. Now, in my mind, this is going to affect the value of the small holdings held by farmers, and this would significantly alter. And in this case, I think that there would be an increase in the rateable value of farming properties. Now, I know that this is not a consideration in judging the merits of an application, but it would have ramifications across the Shire, because the value of these small holdings would go up, and that would mean that you can't have it both ways. The rates of that sort of type of land would go up significantly. So they're my concerns, and basically I would like to go with the recommendation of the officers that it is to refuse the application because it's contrary to the state planning and local policy frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, do you wish to speak?
Yes. I'm speaking in support of Councillor Cordy. A law is a law, but it doesn't mean it's right. And I think this is one of those areas. I mean, this is a 3.4 hectare parcel of land in a farm zone surrounded by a number of other small lots. This is a hangover from the 20s when it was split up. Now, just because it's zoned in a farmland zone, to me, doesn't mean it's a farm. It's basically a cluster of small houses on small properties. So if the houses around have the right to build a house, why can't this one? Is how I'd say it. Is it possible to go to VCAT and get overturned? Possibly, but it would depend on the arguments. I also support Councillor Cordy when he said that we have these sort of pockets, and I think we as a council need to look at them. Just because there's a general blanket over the top of them doesn't mean it's right. And I just think in this one it's about common sense.
Councillor Petrusma, did you wish to speak against the motion?
Yeah, I will speak against the motion, I think. I take on board what Councillor Cordy said in relation to the land, and that certainly it's not suitable for any sort of large farming activity or large animals. It's probably not suitable for any real sort of cropping either, because it's just far too small. I note in his recommendation, well, that he's put forward, it actually requires a farm management plan. So presumably, even though it's not suitable for a farm, Councillor Cordy's motion actually is asking for a farm management plan on the property. So the only way a house is going to be built, I guess, is if there is some sort of management plan for a farm. Whether that would be successful or not is probably another matter. My issue is probably, I tend to agree with Councillor Cordy in that basically as farmland it's basically pretty useless. The problem is it's still zoned farming, and I take on board some of what Councillor Lesser has said. Some of the side effects of starting to allow development on farmland is a byproduct of that, if it was allowed willy-nilly, would be to artificially increase the value of farmland by default. And so farmers who are already quite rightly complaining about incredibly high rates due to the valuations put on them by government-appointed valuers may find that if they're valued higher again in the future, because we allow small developments on small allotments that are traditionally in farming zones, their small farm price rise may go sky high, and their rates might go likewise. So not only is it taking away from what is traditionally a farming zone, it can have a side effect that is probably unplanned and probably the last thing that most farmers would actually want. I do agree that we've got a lot of small pockets of land, some that were split when the freeway went through, small pockets that basically where farms were split up, and many of those are probably suitable for a change to rural living zone, but we don't have a report on that in front of us. That hasn't been done. It certainly probably needs to be done in the future, and it may well be that this particular block is one that sometime in the future should be looked at as possible rural living, which would change the status and make it has a right to have a property. But at this stage it's not. It's a farm zone, and there are two cases, I think one in Taradale and the other one was at Warona. That two in our own shire, not just across the state, but two VCAT hearings where VCAT has upheld the non-development of housing on small lots of farming zone. So I think we're actually going against the state planning scheme. We're going against the officer's recommendations. So whilst I have great sympathy for the applicant, and under any other circumstance, if this was not a farming zone, approval wouldn't be a problem. But I can't get around the technical issue that in fact it is zoned farmland, and the planning scheme says you can't have a house on that land unless it's an actual farm, and there's not really enough in the application in front of me to support the farming activity. So I speak against it.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, did you wish to speak?
As is my own plan. This is very difficult. I mean, yes, no one's pretending that there is a viable farm there, but it is in many ways the thin end of a very big wedge, or maybe it's not quite the thin end, but it's near the thin end. And there's a very real prospect of us creating or expanding on a de facto rural living zone, and the consequent impact on rates as well as lifestyle for people there already there. I'm a bit, I mean, Councillor Cordy has told us with great conviction that a house on the block would actually support minor agricultural activity, and in fact his proposed motion does include the requirement for a farm management plan to be submitted before the use and development starts, and this must provide description of future land management, including description of intended uses in specific areas or layout changes, location of buildings, blah, 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 and ways in which this can actually be farmed, whether it's actual farming, horticulture, small scale, whatever. However, that sits on the permit, but a permit can be left in some drawer somewhere, can't it? And only the bits of interest to the purchaser or future purchasers may be drawn to their attention. The only thing that keeps that requirement that the land be used for farming purposes and therefore satisfies the conditions of our farm zone, the only way we can satisfy that is to include a Section 173 agreement on the title, which means that for in perpetuity, the use of land for a dwelling must at all times be in association with the use of land for an agricultural activity as described in the farm management plan. Now, Councillor Corley has chosen to not include that in his proposal, and that's the only way in which I could see any justification for supporting his motion. Unfortunately, given this is a very strong report, I mean, I commend my fellow councillors' efforts, but it's a very strong officer's report. I think it spells out very clearly why we should not grant the application in this case. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Cordy, your right of reply.
Thanks, Mayor.
What?
Motion.
Sorry, I thought I lost you in that, so it's actually Councillor Neiman before your right of reply. My apologies, Councillor Neiman.
I've just survived harder tasks than you put up. I'm taken by a paragraph or a line on page 35 of the report. It says clause 21.06, protect the land resources relied upon by agriculture. Now, the gentleman who spoke, I think Mr. McDonald, have I got his name right?
It was Mr. Slade.
No,
the landowner, Mr. Beard.
Yeah, Mr. Beard. Two things struck me. The land has been tried and looked at. It's a small block. It doesn't really, we're not protecting the land resources relied upon by agriculture. They've done experimental work on it. Look, there is a change coming. Now, the only way that we get change is by continually pounding at the door. And if we keep pounding at VCAT's door, eventually it'll open. So that's why I support the motion.
Thank you. And right of reply.
Thanks, Mayor Motion. Just a couple of things. With regards to these small what I describe as lifestyle blocks, the values and rates people are paying, but the purchase values already reflect the inflated prices that people will pay over and above what these small blocks are worth to farm, to run a few sheep or a few cows or a few goats or traditional farming. So when people sign up there to buy these sort of properties, the expectation is that they should be able to get a dwelling on it. And please note, this isn't a new subdivision or anything. This is an existing small lot that probably had a shack on it 50 years ago that was knocked down to by somebody running an orchard or something. But the bottom line is that it's really entirely appropriate to have a dwelling on these sort of blocks, as there are on many of the adjacent blocks. Okay. Personally, I don't have a problem with small farms. I think there's good opportunities, and the farm plan is an opportunity for the applicant to demonstrate what their vision and what their dreams are for this property. There's lots of things you can do. That you can have intensive agriculture with hothouses. You could grow fresh produce that we promote our local markets. There's all sorts of activities. You could have grow cut flowers to support our local florists. There's a shortage in supply in that area. The other thing is, with respect to the 173 agreement, it just that's a legal requirement but to go on the title. So it just puts the applicant to additional cost, and it puts them at a disadvantage when compared with all the surrounding properties that don't have one. So that's why I removed that from the draft conditions. So you know what, everyone else has got a dwelling. Everyone wants to just get on, enjoy their property, do their bit of agriculture, enjoy the Harcourt Valley. It's a fantastic spot. So I just commend this to my fellow councillors because, you know, sooner or later, this farming zone as we know it's going to change. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Cordy's motion, please raise your hands. 3. All those against? The motion is not carried. I need another motion.
Division, please. Motion.
A division. All those in favour of Councillor Cordy's motion? We have Councillor Cordy, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Neiman. Those against? Councillor Lesser, Henderson, Machin and Petrusma. I now need another motion, please.
I'll move as per the recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Ah dear. All those in favour? Oh, is there any objection? Yep, so there's 3 objectors. And therefore we have a debate. Do you wish to reprise the debate you've had, or do you wish just to go straight to the vote?
I think it's a different motion, so I'm happy to speak to it briefly, but not cover the same ground.
Sorry, Councillor.
I move that the motion be put.
Yep, so that means the motion is put to the vote without any debate.
Okay.
Thank you. So that's one of our local laws. So so all those in favour of the motion?
As printed, yes.
As printed, yes. Thank you. All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. I appreciate very much the very respectful and thoughtful debate around that. Certainly not easy. We now move on to page 43, planning permit application 106 to 18, development of 2 commercial buildings and waiver of car parking requirements at 33 High Street, Malden. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. What's the motion?
I would request that this matter be referred to a future council meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I've got Councillor Neiman as the seconder. Is there any objection to that? No? Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Gardner?
Yeah. We heard from Mark, who's the applicant, and I have met Mark and his wife recently about this. To me, they did raise quite a few issues, how this application's been handled, and I believe they deserve to have the opportunity to review, to have their plans, sit down with the planning department, and have it reviewed with the objective of meeting the model design guidelines.
So, can you clarify what your motion is again?
To have this planning application deferred to a future council meeting.
Right, so I just need to get a seconder, sorry. Oh, we did, right,
We did.
we've been through that.
We've done that.
Sorry, we lost ourselves in the process there, so you are quite right, go for it.
But I will have to say this, that all throughout, I suppose, I don't call it political creed, whatever, representing my community, I'm a person who's committed to protecting the heritage of Malden. So I'll make it clear that I will not support any proposal next that comes to this table that does not meet the Malden design guidelines. I'm hoping that that will be possible, because I do believe the applicants are well-meaning intention, and I do they do a lot of things in town, and I believe they're well-meaning, and I do hope that if a plan comes to us in the future, it will meet model design guidelines.
Thank you. Councillor Lehman, do you wish to speak?
Councillor Gardner said it pretty much all the way. Look, we're living in times of change. We have to change a little bit, and I was much concerned when I read the Heritage report. The word considered seems to come up a lot, which means it's been thought about, so there is a change coming.
Thank you. Does it, Councillor Petrusma?
I support the motion, but I just want to note that the motion is for a future council meeting. I know Mr Blythe asked for June. It may or may not be possible to put June in, so I'm gathering that's why Councillor Gardner left it open for a future. It may be, but it misses June, so otherwise we're only have to defer it again if it didn't make the meeting, so that's why it's open-ended for Mr Blythe, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Since there's no objections to this, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Now moving to page 63 of the agenda papers, planning permit application 160/2018. Use and development of a dwelling and removal of native vegetation at 146 Collies Road, Moonlight Flat.
I'll move as per the recommendation, Mayor Machin.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Thank you. Any objections? No. Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Petrusma?
Only briefly. It is an appropriate zone, an appropriate development. I note that I think there is still one outstanding application.
Objection?
Objection to the matter, but our officers have put a fairly substantial report in. It meets all the guidelines, it meets the planning permit, it meets the zoning requirements, and therefore it should go ahead.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this?
Just comment there that the conditions in the notice of decision are extensive. Not that unusual in the case of this shire, but there are substantial considerations from native vegetation offsets, control of light spill, didn't see that one for us. Conditions were dealt with the Department of Environment, environmental management plan, fencing conditions. So I would say it's pretty clear that the local environment and our what's it called? The rural conservation zone is amply being looked after by the conditions that are put into this permit. I hope they're not too onerous on the applicants. Wish them good luck.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back.
Councillor Lesser, did you wish to speak? No? Anyone else? There being no objections, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Moving now to page 82, Eco 16, adoption of new policies on complaints and privacy. Councillors, we have privacy and data protection policy. I think we lost a line in our heading there. Okay. So, councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a motion?
Yep.
Councillor Lesser, thank you. Any seconder for this?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Petrusma, thank you. Are there any objections? Councillor Lesser, do you wish to speak to this?
Yes, just briefly. I think it's great that we've got a policy that we all know about, about complaints, data protection, and data protection is something that's quite relevant these days, and I'm glad that our officers have got into this one as the Victorian Ombudsman is looking into various councils' decisions about this and whether we've actually done the principles, and according to that good practice guide, And I think, as it says here, that this draft policy does go towards addressing a number of issues identified in the Ombudsman's 2015 report. So I think it's a lot of work's gone into that. There are many, many pages involved here, and I think it will suit us into the future how we handle any type of complaint within or without. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Thank you, Councillor Neiman.
I can get used to talking business. I've just experienced fairly close-handedly where bureaucracy has overtaken common sense, and I'm a little concerned at the length of this document. It seems to be an awful lot of paperwork, but not much. I'm sure it achieves its result, but can we please have it a bit clearer?
Are you speaking against the motion?
Whatever you like.
Okay, thank you. I just need to have some clarity around whether we've got a debate or not.
Whatever you like.
No, it's whatever you like. I'd like some clarity.
Well, I can go both ways on this, but I really am concerned generally in our society that unintended consequences of laws put in good faith cause difficulties.
Thank you. And I think that probably is a good time to ask for a vote on this issue. So all those in favour? Sorry?
I would just want to comment, especially on the complaints policy. I commend the officers for its brevity. What do you think? Complaints policy is a mere 4 pages long, which, given the breadth and nature of many of the complaints, the complexity of the complaints, I think it's a very good document, and I think it's already been shown to be a pretty robust instrument for managing complaints. And, well, giving them a thorough workout in response. Anyway, I must admit, I haven't studied the privacy and data protection policy so well. Yeah. Privacy and data protection, that's going to go on a bit.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, all those in favour? Against? Thank you. Did you capture that, Mr. Taylor, that we had one against? Thank you. And he wants a division, so could we have all those in favour raise their hands? Councillor Petrusma, Lesser, Henderson, Cordy, Machin and Gardner. Against? Councillor Neiman, thank you. Thanks to the officers for preparing this. This is quite obviously not about what we do, but unfortunately we've got a lot of risks to manage, and this is part of that. We now move to delegates' reports. Councillors, is there anything you wish to report? No? Well, I hand it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Fazzard, to report.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Our report on our activities for last month in front of the councillors, as always, and as always, happy to answer any questions on any of the matters that are on there. Two that I might mention, Mayor, the Healthy Heart of Victoria, the Active Living Census media launch, reminds me that we have quite actively launched that initiative in the last week or so. So that is, it's a really important initiative for the entire region. So this is an initiative from the Logging Capacity Regional Partnerships. The total initiative is called Healthy Heart of Victoria, and one of the 3 initiatives within that is an active living census, which is designed basically to find out where do people think their health is at now, where do they wish it was, and what's stopping them from getting to where they wish they were, both in the way that they exercise or don't, and the way that they eat and live generally. So it's a really important census that we want every person in our community to get involved in answering and helping us learn a lot more about what are the things that we and many other groups can do to help people have the most active and healthy lives that they possibly can. So I say every shire in the region is involved in this, so 6 councils are involved in this in the Logging Capacity region, and every household in every one of those 6 shires is going to get an invitation personally to be involved in this census. The return that, and it's based on one that was done in 2014, in the city of Greater Bendigo, had an incredibly important contribution to the way that Bendigo has looked at its investment for both the city itself and also other levels of government, how they are supporting people to be really healthy in the city of Greater Bendigo. They are again in this as well, so they've got the benefit of, they're going to be able to look between two censuses to see what's the change been since they've been trying to support people based on the needs that they learnt in the first one. Again, really important issue for everyone to get involved in, so I encourage you councillors to encourage everyone to get involved. 16th of June, I think, is when the census closes online, and if people get involved and they do submit their information to the census by then, they go in the running to win prizes with a total pool of about $12,000 worth, I think. So there's even some good things in there for people too, reasons why people might want to get involved beyond the really important health and wellbeing side of it. The other one I thought I'd mention, Mayor, I was one of a panel of 4 who was involved in a housing panel discussion that Castlemaine Health's board initiated. Really great to hear that, like you, they are very, very interested in things well beyond perhaps what you might expect them to be involved in. And this is particularly in relation to the housing needs, whether that be affordability or social housing or any other forms of housing where they're hearing from their community that there's a need to address. So it was great to be invited along to talk about what you're doing, what you're thinking about in relation to housing needs across the whole spectrum in our community, and also to hear from others about how they might be able to respond to that. But a terrific initiative from Castlemaine Health to be thinking about that, which goes well beyond, you think, to the normal business that the board might be considering there.
Sorry, I missed that one. I just, we had I co-chair the Indigenous Roundtable, and I'm really mentioning that because I'm going to church. This coming Sunday is Sorry Day, and we'll be having a ceremony at 10 o'clock at Harcourt, and I welcome everyone to attend. Bring some tissues, because Auntie Julie will be telling her story. I don't think it's going to be a happy one. And the next day is the opening of Reconciliation Week in our town hall, so I invite you all to come there. Thank you. We have no notices of motion. We have no urgent special business. Councillors, I'm seeking a resolution. Thank you.
Yeah, Matron, I move that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with section 89(2)A of the Local Government Act 1989 for business relating to personnel matters.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lesser, thank you. All those in favour? All those in favour? Thank you. I declare the meeting closed to the public. Ms. Perry,